Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome back to Development Hell Podcast. And we're back with Alex and Matt. And today we're going to be giving each other some topics to rant about. So that's going to be our main topic, some ideas for us to spark some spirited discussions about. But before we jump into that, there's quite a few films coming out over the next 2 weeks to start off, and we're going to figure out if we're going to greenlight these films or send them back to development hell. So there's 3 movies for each of the next 2 weeks we're taking a look at. So Friday the 7th, we have a few films we're going to talk about. The first one we got here is Here Today, which is a film starring and directed by Billy Crystal. And when a veteran comedy writer meets New York street singer, they form an unlikely yet hilarious and touching friendship. And Billy Crystal is this aged, veteran comedy writer and meets Tiffany Haddish's street singer. So with this basic premise, the fact that Billy Crystal wrote and directed this film and stars in it with Tiffany Haddish, Alex, what are your thoughts?
That one sounds up my alley, so I'm going to green light that one. Billy Crystal, I don't really find him to be that funny, but there's something very sweet about him that comes across, and there's something likable about him. It'll be interesting to see him. I've seen one movie from him before that I liked back when I was younger, and so it'll be interesting to see, this one. So yeah, I'll green light this.
All righty, so we got one green light. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, it sounds okay. I worry that Tiffany Haddish isn't a typecaster, so but every single time she does what she does, it's really funny. I'm always nervous that she's going to continue to do the same stuff, and it's gonna be tiresome, but it's effective. So I guess she knows what she's doing, but yeah, I just hope that she just. What's her character again?
She's a street singer.
Yeah. So I mean, I gotta watch the trailer, and then I guess I could decide. But yeah, why not? Yeah, greenlight it.
I wonder if she could sing. Well, I'm assuming she can sing if they're having her play a street singer. But my thoughts,
auto tune,
like Emma Watson from Beauty and the Beast.
Yes.
This one I'm gonna give a soft green light to. It concerns me a little bit when older comedians who haven't done a whole lot try to come back and do something. But I love Billy Crystal, whether it's voicing in Monsters Inc. or When Harry Met Sally, or even small things like Miracle Max from The Princess Bride. Yeah. Just all those different kinds of things. He's hilarious. I haven't seen anything he's directed, but I imagine he's a great comedy writer with all of his material. And I think Tiffany Haddish is great. There's definitely films where I'm just she's kind of doing her thing. And what was that? Her and Rose Byrne were in it. Like a Boss, I think it was, that came out last year. Didn't think that was funny at all. But you can't underestimate how funny Tiffany Haddish is if you watch Girls Trip. Oh my God. So I'm going to green light this. So it sounds like in general, we have a bit of a consensus that we're kind of looking forward to seeing this little comedy. The next one we have here, this is actually, it's called The Human Factor. And this is actually a documentary. And this is the epic behind-the-scenes story of the United States' 30-year effort to secure peace in the Middle East, recounted from the unique perspectives of the American mediators on the front lines. So this sounds like this is a very serious, intense kind of documentary, and potentially very political, and has a lot of things to chat about. So Alex, are you going to greenlight The Human Factor?
I'm going to greenlight it because I think that we should greenlight things like this. Mm-hmm. But the question of are you going to run out and watch this? Probably not. But I think it's something I would definitely watch, with a group of people or a friend who was like, hey, let's really think about this and talk about this, especially at a time when I think people are just reacting to things. These sorts of movies could actually get people to understand what's going on and think about it in terms of what's actually happening, how people are actually being treated, what the governments are actually doing or not doing to take care of the people. And I think that's why I'm going to greenlight it, because we need films like that.
All righty. What are your thoughts, Matt?
I'm not gonna watch it, but like I don't know, I feel like I've seen this before. And I'm also thinking that it might have a certain slant to it. You know what I mean? And then it's like, is this a documentary or is this like a documentary? You know what I mean? Like it's almost kind of like you cherry pick. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, but I like what you said, Alex. It is important. Like there's a lot of misinformation, and then people kind of like to pretend that certain parts of history didn't happen. So yeah, so that's important. Yeah, they keep like the realistic stuff alive. But I mean, like, I don't know if I want to watch it. Maybe I'll watch it after the pandemic. I don't know.
It's interesting because this is from us director Dror Murray, who is an Israeli filmmaker. And that could be an interesting perspective on all of this in terms of the slant that it might be having.
Point. Yeah.
And like that was the one thing when you started talking about this, I'm like, who made this movie? Because obviously it's focusing on a lot of Americans and the people that have done things in terms of this. It's definitely going to be an interesting documentary. So like, I think it's worth seeing. It's going to be interesting to see what it does, because it's like, there's not a whole lot of documentaries that get like big wide releases kind of thing, unless you're like The Inconvenient Truth or The Inconvenient Sequel or a Michael Moore documentary or something like the new Street Gang one, which is about Sesame Street and stuff like that, which is also highly recommend seeing Street Gang. That was a great documentary about Sesame Street. But I'm going to greenlight it. I'm probably going to watch it, and I'll be very interested to see what kind of perspective it lends to this whole situation. Now, our last one for Friday the 7th is Wrath of Man, which is a new action thriller from director Guy Ritchie. And this seems to be a more serious action thriller starring Jason Statham. And so the plot follows H, a cold and mysterious character working at a cash truck company responsible for moving hundreds of millions of dollars across Los Angeles each week. So I feel like Guy Ritchie's pretty hit or miss with things, but I'm interested to see. But Alex, what are your thoughts?
I'm not big in the Jason Statham.
I saw your face that you made when he said his name.
Yeah, I don't know why. I just don't get. It's just tough guy, Australian or New Zealand. I don't know which one.
I think he's English.
Never mind.
He's from Derbyshire, which, because like he's very much like a kind of Cockney, kind of British. It's like, true. I'm Jason Statham.
Right. I know.
Basically, cue Italian Job, where Seth Green's just like, hi, I'm Handsome Rob. It's like, oh, you're so handsome. Do you want me to take my clothes off for you right now? And just like that whole entire sequence just sums up Jason Statham in movies so well.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to greenlight this one because I'm not a big fan of Guy Ritchie. I'm sorry. He just, he hasn't, even some of his stuff. Like, I'm not big in like Snatch was that Guy Ritchie? That was Guy Ritchie, right?
That's probably his most well-renowned film.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about that film. So I'm not crazy about like his overhand right. I don't know if I'm going to be, I could be wrong though, but I'm not going to greenlight it. Just based on that, I'm not going to greenlight him.
Alrighty, what about you, Matt?
Can you look up who wrote it?
It is there's 2 writers and 3 screenwriters, which is interesting. Guy Ritchie's one of them. Marn Davies, who seems to be a writer and actor who works with Guy Ritchie. Ivan Atkinson, who seems to be a writer who works with Guy Ritchie. And then a couple other writers. Looks like one of them was involved in the Silent Hill movie. Babylon AD. I remember when that movie came out. So Matt is a thumbs down.
This is not getting better.
Yeah, I mean, like, so the gentleman was interesting. Like, so, like, Snatch and like Lock, Stock, and whatever the hell else. It's a long name. Like that.
Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Yeah, like also that's a good song. And never mind, it doesn't matter. But like, yeah, I like those. I like the fact that like the characters, they kind of talk like the Tarantino dialogue inside of Scorsese like setting. I don't know, like, so I like that idea, but then when I saw this, I have seen this trailer, and Jason Statham, it reminds me of like his movies from like 10 years ago, and I don't really miss those. So like,
yeah,
if he's talking like really fast and witty, and that's interesting, but I don't ever get that impression from him anyway. So I don't think it's going to be like an interesting kind of like weird little mix like Ritchie's movies are, at least the ones that I like. He made some other bad ones though. He made like a historical movie like not Beowulf.
He made King Arthur, Legend of the Sword.
There we go.
Which I saw an advanced screening of that actually, and I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to, but it's a bit of a hot mess. Like here's the thing, like my favorite things about Guy Ritchie films are when he has great charismatic actors who just go for it. Like that's why I love The Gentleman so much, is like the cast is great. And like Matthew McConaughey is great as Mickey. Charlie Hunnam, I think, is doing some of his best work in Guy Ritchie films, because they try to make Charlie Hunnam to be like a stereotypical lead in like Pacific Rim and stuff like that. But he works a lot more when he's like a snarky, like going back and forth. Like I enjoyed his banter in King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. I thought he was really great in The Gentleman, but like the supporting characters sold The Gentleman to me so much, because like I loved Hugh Grant in it as Fletcher, and Colin Farrell as Coach in it is like, come on, hit me with it. And he's just like, make it sharp, cook me with it. When he's trying to get these kids to like talk smack on him and they suck at it, he's like disappointed. And it's like that, you have to have the right actors in the film. And like, I'm looking at like Jason Statham, I feel like honestly has been at his best in early Guy Ritchie movies, because that's where he started, was in Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch. And you have Josh Hartnett in this, which outside of Penny Dreadful, I really haven't seen him much in a whole lot of things in the last 10 years. Scott Eastwood's in it, which like I'd prefer them to not keep trying to make Scott Eastwood happen. And like Andy Garcia's in it. And like I enjoy a good little Andy Garcia thrown into things, but like it seems like it's a lot of small character actors kind of thrown in here. And like I'm gonna do a soft green light here because, and only because of The Gentleman. Because if this was before The Gentleman, I'd be like, no dice. Like Aladdin was an interesting choice to have Guy Ritchie direct that live action Aladdin movie. I thought it was interesting that he liked doing it because he's a street rat. He's like all the street characters from all of his early movies. And I'm like, bit of a stretch, but you know, he definitely didn't look like he could direct a musical. And then like the Sherlock Holmes movies are very hit or miss for me. Cause like it's a strange choice, but like, I'm happier seeing Guy Ritchie making crime thrillers like this than trying to do those bigger movies. So I'm inclined to like, I'm interested to see it. I'm supposed to get a screener this week before this comes out. So I'll be interested to see. It did seem like the little bit of the trailer that I watched, it seems a little bit more serious than like The Gentleman was. Because like The Gentleman, I laughed through like the whole entire movie because they're obviously supposed to be really snarky and everything. This is an interesting next one, and it is... Oh, and I spelled it wrong, so it didn't come up on IMDb. Come on. There we go. Spiral from the Book of Saw comes out on the 14th. So this is the next Saw film. And this is directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, who did, oh God, Repo, that creepy opera film, and then Saw 2. But the big hook here is this was put together by Chris Rock. So Chris Rock starring in this as a detective, and Samuel Jackson's also in it. A criminal mastermind unleashes a twisted form of justice in Spiral, the terrifying new chapter from the Book of Saw. So I'm going to hold my thoughts on Saw until I get around to myself to greenlight this or not. But Alex, what do you think about Spiral?
Well, forgive me. I don't know if you guys can hear the landscaping in the background on the other block behind me, but love Chris Rock's comedy, love Samuel L. Jackson, but I have a hard. I'm gonna send this one back, just because of I'm not a big fan of horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
The first Saw was a good movie, I have to admit, but it's not my thing. And hearing, I don't know, Chris Rock being that involved with it, it just as a comedy writer, I don't know. I'm not a comedy writer. I mean, a horror writer, comedy guy. I'm not going to greenlight it. Not for me.
How about you, Matt?
It'll be interesting because usually like bad movies like this, the jokes are bad. And like the story's bad, so hopefully the jokes are good, and the story might still be bad, but maybe the story might be good. I don't know. I like the trailer a lot, like a lot. Wow. And like I think there's a scene in the trailer where Samuel Jackson either is like stuck in barbed wire, or I think something happens to him, and he's like yelling. I don't know. I kind of want to see that. I want to see Samuel Jackson like.
I want to see
that man is old. That man is old. Can you look up his age?
I think he's 7. I think he's closing in on 70 if he's not.
For real?
Already.
Oh man, I didn't know he was that old. Damn.
He was born in 48.
Damn. Holy
moly. Crap, he's 73.
73.
Samuel Jackson is 73?
Yep.
No. Oh shit.
I teach math, so I hope I got this right. Yeah, because 52 years to 2000, and on 21 more.
Right, you're right. Wow, Sam Jackson's up there. Damn.
All I want to hear is him screaming, "Ah, mother!" Get me out of this trap or something like that. My prediction is, I have no reason to believe this, but I think Samuel L. Jackson dies within 5 minutes of appearing on screen. I will bet money that his character's here to set up the movie, and he's like at the beginning of the film, and he like pulls a Drew Barrymore from Scream. I will bet money.
Yeah.
So if either of you want to bet $1 on this, I will do that. We're gonna trading places it. If we'll talk about this later, but I'm convinced that's gonna happen.
When is it coming out?
When is it coming out? What?
When is it coming out?
The 14th. So this comes out 2 weeks from us recording, but like a little bit less than that when this actually posts. But like, I'm supposed to be getting a screener for it too. I'm more excited for this than I would greenlight this movie. Honestly, I did not like the first Saw movie. I didn't think it was a good movie. Honestly, the acting from like Lee Wana was acting in it, right? He was the guy in the bathroom. I hated him. I thought he was terrible. And I'm like, this wasn't and it's interesting because I hated this and the Blair Witch Project. These are both like big movies, like big horror movies that were so impactful. I'm like, I watched both of them. I'm like, I didn't think these were good movies. So like for me, I'm not a huge fan of Saw, and I think these kinds of movies is where it's just like, let's throw in torture porn just to like unnerve people instead of actually using like craft to scare people. And because like how many Saw movies are there at this point? Like 10 or something crazy like this. But I watched the trailer for this, and the trailer sold me on this. And honestly, I'm interested to see Chris Rock in this in a different kind of role. So I wouldn't personally greenlight this story if somebody brought this into me, but like I'm interested in watching it, that it's actually existing. So I'm interested to see. I'm really hoping that it's good. Chris Rock's trying to do more serious things like Fargo and then this. So I'm interested to see how this goes. But I am convinced Samuel L. Jackson's going to die within like the first 10 minutes of this movie. Just putting that out there. Our second film coming out on the 14th is actually from one of my favorite filmmakers working today. It's called Those Who Wish Me Dead. And this is from writer-director Taylor Sheridan, who wrote Sicario, Hell or High Water, wrote and directed Wind River, and created the show Yellowstone. And who actually just co-wrote that new Tom Clancy Without Remorse movie that came out that we talked about when we did our I think we talked about it the last time we had our podcast. But this is starring Angelina Jolie, Nicholas Hoult, and John Bernthal. And a teenage murder witness finds himself pursued by two assassins in the Montana wilderness, with a survival expert tasked with protecting him, and a forest fire threatening to consume them all. So, throw in some more drama. I didn't get a chance to watch this trailer yet, but I'm guessing Angelina Jolie is the survival expert protecting this kid from assassins played by Nicholas Hoult and John Bernthal. And it also has Aidan Gillen, aka Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, and Tyler Perry, which I'm assuming is a more serious role, which that actually gets me more excited, honestly, a little bit. For the record, I really enjoyed his speech at the Oscars.
Me too.
I thought it was one of the more passionate, interesting speeches. But besides that point, so we got Taylor Sheridan writing, directing this film. We got a pretty strong cast here. So, Alex, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to greenlight it because I actually do like the plot. And I haven't seen Sicario and the other film, but I did see Wind River. And I thought that was real. Also had John Bernthal. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh my God. The one scene that he's in that movie is.
Yeah. Side turning. Yeah. Oh God. That was, So
quick fun fact.
Yeah.
So the reason that film was so hard to get budget for was because studios wanted them to cut that scene.
Really? Wow.
And the Native American organization that they filmed with wound up bankrolling most of the film because of it.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, to tell indigenous stories.
Sure.
So that was interesting. So
it was a beautifully shot film, and it was tense, and it was, and it delivered. It was, redemptive too. So yeah, no, I've, just judging based on that and liking the plot, I'll greenlight it. Yeah.
Alrighty. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, sure. Nicholas Hoult is pretty cool. Angelina Jolie, what was the last movie that she was in? Or did she direct her last movie? Yeah, what was she in?
The last two movies she appeared in 2020, she voiced one of the characters in The One and Only Ivan. That was on Disney Plus. And she was in a interesting Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland combined adaptation called Come Away that came out last year. She played the mother of two children. And then Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, came out in 2019. But she is actually supposed to be in Eternals this year as well, the new Marvel film. So that's what she's been doing lately.
Yeah, that's okay. That's cool. Yeah. For some reason, she wasn't on my radar. I feel like I thought for a second she wasn't in anything for like a while.
Well,
but
I
also, I
think
haven't seen any of those things you just mentioned.
fair. But
yeah.
Do you greenlight it?
Yeah, sure. I'm not gonna watch it. Probably, maybe, but I need a trailer first.
Okay. So this is 100% green light for me, seeing as Taylor Sheridan's one of my favorite filmmakers. So I'm definitely all in on this. John Bernthal's great. It has a great cast. It has a very compelling situation that they set up with this. And I hope they make the most of the tension. But like, if he captures what he did with Wind River, because even the interesting thing is, like, Sicario was written by Taylor Sheridan, directed by Denis Villeneuve, shot by Roger Deakins. So, like, there's been a lot of talent going into his films, and I'm excited to see this one. So, this last film that we have has been, like, rolling around unreleased for a while now, and it's The Woman in the Window, which is finally getting released because Netflix bought it. And this is from director Joe Wright, who had last film was Darkest Hour with Gary Oldman that he won his Oscar for. He did Pride and Prejudice, Atonement, Hannah. And this is starring Amy Adams, who plays an agoraphobic woman living alone in New York, begins spying on her neighbors only to witness a disturbing act of violence. It's like very Rear Window kind of feeling thriller. And this is starring Amy Adams, Gary Oldman, Anthony Mackie, Wyatt Russell, Brian Tyree Henry, Julianne Moore, and Jennifer Jason Leigh. So there's a lot of people in this movie.
Wow.
But it was supposed to release in 2019 originally, got pushed back because of COVID, and then Netflix bought it.
Okay. I remember the trailer for this. Amy Adams gained weight for this.
Mm-hmm.
She gained, because she's usually Amy Adams.
Yeah.
She really gained weight for this role, which is not something you typically see a Hollywood actress do. So that's kind of new. I'll green light this. Julianne Moore is one, Amy Adams is one of my favorites, but Julianne Moore is also one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. And Jennifer Jason Leigh is pretty damn good too. It's kind of underrated. She's always been kind of underrated.
Yeah.
So
thank you, Tarantino, for putting her back on the map.
Yeah.
The Hateful Eight. You see here, this is Daisy Domergue.
What a role to be put on the map for, back on the map for, So, yeah.
Alrighty.
Matt, what are your thoughts on The Woman in the Window?
I remember watching this trailer a long time ago. I don't know if it's for me, but I'll greenlight it for you guys.
I felt the same way. Actually, that's funny because I forgot about it. I remember when I saw that, I was like, oh, I like Amy Adams, but this movie seems kind of weird. And I typically don't enjoy those types of characters, like the agoraphobic ones, because I know too many people in my real life who are a little too much like that. They're not agoraphobic, but sometimes they feel like they're borderline agoraphobic. So no, it's funny. I'm glad you said that, Matt, because I did feel the same way, but I think I'm greenlighting it just because of the cast.
Oh, dang. And well, this one sticks out for me because the screenplay is from Tracy Letts, who also has a role in the film. And Tracy Letts has written some interesting films because he wrote Killer Joe, that film with Matthew McConaughey, and August Osage County. But also he's been an actor as of late, and he's been popping up in Lady Bird, Ford v. Ferrari, Little Women, The Big Short. And apparently he's also in this. So, he's a really talented screenwriter and playwright. So there's a lot of talent going into this. I'm gonna greenlight it, but I remember watching the trailer. I'm like, this is definitely one of those movies that, like, if it's firing on all cylinders, this is gonna be great. If not, this is gonna be trashy and just a cringy thriller. And because like this seems like a Hitchcock film. Like this is the premise for a Hitchcock film. But like, there's not a whole lot of people that could pull off the high concept stuff that Hitchcock did. So I'm interested. This seems very different for director Joe Wright too, especially because he seems like he does mostly period pieces, or at least he's most famous for doing a lot of period pieces. But yeah, so there's quite a few films coming out over the next 2 weeks. So all of these are theater releases, except for The Woman in the Window, which is a Netflix release. And then Those Who Wish Me Dead will also release on HBO Max because it's a Warner Brothers film. So the rest of them are actually in theaters. So we're starting to get to the point where there's a lot more movies steering clear of VOD and just going back to the theaters. And I think a big part of it is, I don't know if either of you saw this, but Mortal Kombat made $22.5 million this past weekend in theaters. And there was a Demon Slayer anime film which made $20 million in theaters domestically last week. So this was like the first time we had two films make $20 million at the box office in the same weekend in a long time. So I think a lot of people are getting ready to go back to the theater.
Okay.
So I'm interested to see, because I don't know if any more films are going to get pushed back at this point. I think we're going to be getting A Quiet Place Part 2 at the end of this month, and we're getting Fast 9 in June and Black Widow in July. I think we're kind of getting back to the point where we're going to be really getting theatrical films. So it seems like an interesting turning point. But now it's rant time. So how we're going to do this is each of us is going to bring up a topic for one of our other hosts here to rant about a little bit. Mm-hmm. So honestly, Matt's the one who keeps bringing up we need to rant about things. So I'm going to let Matt go first.
All right. Alex, one is for you.
Okay.
To make the throwing a frisbee or brick. I don't know which one. Is there a line for what a filmmaker can put on screen? Should there be a line? Should there be is responsible filmmaking, is that even a thing? Does it need to be a thing? Yeah.
Okay. So is there such thing as responsible filmmaking? Should that be a thing that filmmakers have to follow? Mm-hmm. And is there a line that you can cross? Mm-hmm. A line you can go over?
I was on Rotten Tomatoes once, and I saw a negative review for Pulp Fiction. And I didn't actually click on the article, but the little blurb thing, it said, this film celebrates excess. This film celebrates excess and too much drug use. That's what it said. I was like, what the hell? So yeah. And I disagree.
Well, yeah, and of course, I love Pulp Fiction, and Pulp Fiction, it's funny to us because I look at Pulp Fiction like it's kind of like a comedy, but the characters in the movies, they are kind of like scumbag characters. It's just that on this day, they happen to be the coolest people in the world, just because of the way they're written. I think that the drug scene in that with John Travolta, you don't see a lot of drug scenes like that, where when he's shooting up the heroin, it's almost like he's, it's like an orgasmic, wonderful sort of thing. It's almost like he's on it's almost like he's on a slow moving roller coaster. He's having the time of his life, just getting high with the heroin. We're not used to seeing that. Usually in a movie, they're in a dark alley, and they're cooking with the spoon and there's yelling, and he's like, it's just really dark thing because because that reinforces the message that drugs are bad, but drugs don't.
Police sirens, the whole shebang.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I remember Jungle Fever. I think I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but Spike Lee's Jungle Fever, like the way he depicts the drug use, it's like, whoa, this is freaking dark. Same thing with like Basketball Diaries with Leo DiCaprio when he was really young. The way they show the drug use and the effect of it, it's like, oh shit, I never ever want to do drugs. But he's showing a hit, like this is all that this hitman has. I mean, it was one of the only things he has. He has his gun and he has his drugs, and he likes his gun and he likes his drugs, and drugs make him feel good. This is how the drug makes him feel. So I think people probably feel like, he's fetishizing the drug use in this case, and so I think that's where a lot of that criticism comes from for Pulp Fiction is, the violence. It all comes off. These characters feel pretty good about the things that they're doing. They don't seem to have a whole lot of remorse or regret. They seem to enjoy their vices. And when you show people enjoying their vices, then I think that it's like, well, wait a second, that's not the narrative that we're used to hearing. And of course, Tarantino's a big one who is kind of, I think a lot of people look at him like he's crossed that line, but I think there are a lot of filmmakers. We were talking about Wolf of Wall Street when we first came on. A lot of people felt like they crossed the line, like it was basically like a porno. Like people aren't used to seeing that much nudity all the time in your face. But once again, back to the word excess, that film is about people who were pushing life to excess all the time. These are not people, and by the way, once again, they also really enjoyed it. They enjoyed the excess. And when you're depicting human beings in a film enjoying these things, then you have to try to be accurate. You have to try and be true to the way these real people would be like, because if you always try to wrap it in a bow, or you always try to stay below that line, everyone's going to know it. Everybody's going to feel it. Violence, sex, drug use, these are things that, as we go from being kids to growing older and coming through school and try to start talking about these things and dealing with these things in a mature way, I think that I can speak for myself too. Like a lot of times I don't want to hear it. I don't want to think about, real violence, I may not necessarily want to watch a documentary on the Holocaust, for example, because, like, do I really want to have to stare this thing in the face? Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List, the violence in that is very real. It's super real. The bullet to the head, it's that way for a reason. I remember when I saw that when I was younger, I was like, oh, wow, that wasn't entertaining. That was just that felt real, And so with film, I think that there's a responsibility to have that realism with film. And as far as like crossing a line, like, I think that when something is for pure entertainment, you're saying, well, this is going to be for pure entertainment, and we are going to set somebody on fire and we're going to have everybody laugh at that. I think that it takes a great deal of talent to know when you can do that and have it be funny. So it's a horrible thing to set somebody on fire and have everyone laugh at that. Of course, if it's something like what happened in Vietnam, nobody wants to laugh at that, So if it's something like what happens in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, when DiCaprio comes out with a flamethrower and shoots the girl with now she's in flames and she's in the pool. Everybody laughed and clapped when that happened, and that's the reaction that Tarantino wanted. He wanted everybody to clap and laugh at this real life, Once Upon a Time real life murderer getting set on fire by his movie star Leo DiCaprio. So I think that my answer is that film is this medium where filmmakers are going to move that line to serve the purposes of their story, and the line in the sand changes depending on what the motive is, and are you depicting something real. In that case, if it was just for sheer entertainment value and something like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I'm trying to think of another example to get off Tarantino land. I'm trying to think of another example of John Carpenter, movies from the 80s where, lightning's being shot out of people's, hands, and Asians are being stereotyped potentially in something like Big Trouble in Little China. Now you're dealing with, we're trying to entertain people, but we might be crossing a line because of a stereotype, or we're crossing a line because of the violence. I think it depends on who's watching the movie. I think it depends on how you're viewing it. I think you have to view it in the context of what the filmmaker is trying to say. If it is just for sheer entertainment value, I'm just here to get a response, then maybe there is an argument to say, okay, you shouldn't cross that line. I think that the last thing I'll say is, I think that if you're championing the underdog, or you're championing the person who is oppressed, or you're championing a group of people who are trying to get back at someone who's above them in a ladder, social ladder, historical ladder, it seemed like audiences are going to say, oh, move that line. Move that line as far as you need to fuck these people up. But but that's just, I think that's where we're at right now in terms of that. If it gets flipped the other way, then it's like, no. It's a whole other thing. It has to be represented a different way. It can't be for sheer entertainment value. So that line, I guess in closing, the line is going to get moved based on the filmmaker, based on the story, and also based on the era that we're in, and so yeah, that's a good one.
It's interesting because you could look at that in so many different ways, because you can look at it like purely as like, does a film go too far with sexual content? If you look at it in that way, like a film like Antichrist, which I'm pretty sure has unsimulated sex scene at the beginning of the movie. And it's just like, is that too much? Or is a film showing too much nudity too much? And it's so interesting because it's a very American versus European thing, because like America is like, my God, don't show me breasts. Don't show me penis.
It's okay to show me violence, but not sex. Yeah. By the way, there is a European film. I don't know the name of it, but it's about a rape and it starts.
Like irreversible or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the whole film, and I think it starts from the end and goes all the way to the beginning, right? The end of the rape. And
I want to double check something in terms of who made that, because here
a very controversial. I never saw it, but what I know is incredibly controversial.
Yeah,
but there are people. The film,
no way.
Okay,
that dude has made some movies.
Yeah, right.
Like Climax. I remember watching that in the theater and just being like, what the F am I watching? And like there's very few films that I've seen in a theater on that level of like, what the F am I watching right now? And like,
what were you watching? I don't even know about this movie.
Climax. So basically it's a group of dancers and performers in this secluded place that they rented, this like rundown hotel or whatever with a ballroom in a blizzard, and they're practicing, they're rehearsing, and somebody spikes the alcohol. And they all are high at AF, and the craziest paranoid shit happens in this movie, and it's so oppressive in the way that it's shot. And like there's certain directors that push that line so much. Lars von Trier.
Yeah.
Like the film Antichrist, to begin with, movie opens up with an unsimulated sex scene and a baby falling out of a window. Parents are distracted making love, and the baby falls out the window and dies. That's the start of the film.
Yeah.
So like Funny Games. Like the film Cash, and like there's just so many of those kinds of films. But like you could look at sex, is it gratuitous nudity? Like Wolf of Wall Street, is it gratuitous? Did they really need to do this? Blue is the Warmest Color is a 3-hour lesbian love film, like this love affair between these two young women. Does it need to have like softcore porn level sex scenes? Well, honestly, some of those sex scenes are like porn level sex scenes. And like, is that needed? Is that gratuitous? Is that crossing a line? Violence is something like RoboCop going across the line, where it's like squibs and like floods of blood? Or is it worse to have just nonstop killing but no blood to make it feel realistic? Like think about John Wick. Many people watch those movies for the stylized violence, and it's exciting, it's exhilarating. But when you take a step back and think about it, I'm literally watching this movie to see how many ways Keanu Reeves can creatively kill people. It's really well done, really well choreographed. It's exciting, it's well shot. But when you take a step back and really think about it, you're watching it to watch people die. And is that too much? Like The Expendables, like it's just about how many people all these big movie stars can kill. And it's just like, does it cross a line? And then there's the responsibility of a director in different ways, because are they responsible? Like, so say Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Inglourious Bastards, Django Unchained, is there a responsibility for history? And honestly, for me, as a white man, a white Christian man, watching Inglourious Bastards and Django Unchained for the first time in the moment, I didn't see anything wrong with what happened in those movies. But you could take a step back and really think about, there's some issues there. I heard a very interesting thought on the Cinephiles from a Jewish man, that Inglourious Bastards was written in a way that doesn't understand the Jewish people. Because like part of being Jewish is not going and violently seeking vengeance upon people. And it's just like, obviously Quentin Tarantino's like, you know what'd be really cool? Having Jewish people go kill Hitler. And like, obviously that was an idea he had, and he made a whole entire movie about it. Honestly, I really enjoy Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I thought in the moment, this ending's a little weird. And like even worse, The Haunting of Sharon Tate, which is this horrible horror movie that completely disrespects the memory of Sharon Tate. I'm just like, is there responsibility if you're doing something on real people? And that's the thing. You're watching a film. Do you have responsibility for those real people? Look at Braveheart. Braveheart's like the most historically inaccurate movie ever. I love Braveheart. But like the young French princess in real story timeline was like 5 when William Wallace was killed. So obviously they honestly were just like, let's cherry pick some things and throw this all together.
Okay.
So like they never met. So to clarify, in real life, they never crossed paths, nothing.
That's the line, by the way, Alex.
That's way past the line.
Yes, it was completely construct for the movie. And like, did they really need to have William Wallace fall in love with the princess from France? No, but they did. And like that Gladiator. No, there's no historical evidence that Marcus Aurelius was murdered by his son. No Roman emperor got killed by a gladiator in the middle of the Colosseum. But like, I love Gladiator. And obviously I'm talking about a lot of dad movies. Because like, these are movies that my dad loves. And most dads do. But the thing is like, is there a responsibility to the actual history of things and to tell things accurately?
Yeah.
So, and it's such an interesting question that you brought up, Matt, because there's a lot of different ways to look at it. Like for me personally, I hate Saw, I hate Hostel, I hate basically any horror film that Rob Zombie makes. Because like, it's torture porn, it's gore porn, and that's not why I watch a horror film. I want real craftsmanship of filmmaking to scare me. And like, it's the same reason I hate jump scares. Unless they're done really well, they're really cheap. You can make anybody get scared by like making an obnoxious sound out of nowhere with the soundtrack. Like blast music next to somebody without them knowing. They'll probably jump in their seat. So like those kinds of things. But like Saw goes really far in, and basically it's, you're going to see those movies to watch people die in really, really ridiculous and creative ways. And it's just like, and then you could even take this one step further, not even what's on the screen, but how they made it for the screen. Are directors responsible for how they treat actors? Quentin Tarantino actually strangled Diane Kruger for that scene in Glorious Bastards because he wanted it to look real. It was his hands around her throat, putting pressure so her eyes looked like they were popping out of her head.
Damn.
Stanley Kubrick emotionally abused basically anybody in his movies.
Yeah.
Look at Shelley Duvall, made her get screamed at by Jack Nicholson like 150 times during that one scene in The Shining.
And see, for me, that stuff is even more side turning because that's real, like real life. And you know, but I think obviously, Matt, what you're alluding to is the art going too far. You know, I mean, we do a whole video on this. I mean, like, is there like, what, I know you came up with that one. What's your kind of take on it?
Well, number one, I like the fact that you guys didn't just immediately go to horror. Because I feel like the easy genre to kind of like to say, hey, you stop that would be just a horror. And so I like that you guys didn't just jump on that. Yeah, I do think that there is like a responsibility. And I like that you said it's a time period. And I like that you said that there's an intent that you need to put into context. I like that you said that a lot of people, for better or worse, they like seeing like depictions of people punching up instead of punching down in terms of like the ladder. And even though the punching up might, like, it feels good, but is that the right message? I don't know. There's like a lot of stuff to consider. I think it is a very individual type of answer, because like what you might find like I can watch Friday the 13th and be completely okay, but then somebody else might watch that and think that that was like depraved, you know? Like, so that's, and also when you watch that movie in the context of like 2020 or 2021 now, like that movie's kind of not tame, but tame-ish, by the way.
Well, that's so interesting because and this is going to sound really bad. When I watch A Clockwork Orange for the first time and like you're told this was an X-rated movie and like this was like the craziest thing ever, I'm like, as somebody today watch this film, I'm like, I've seen worse. And I'm like, should I feel bad about that? Kind of thing.
No, but and here's the thing. We grew up, I mean, you couldn't get away from it. And this is what, Fred Rogers was worried about, to bring up Mr. Rogers again, kids and young people being exposed to violence and to anger and to real negative feelings in ways that weren't sort of kind of filtered in a way where people could understand it. Mortal Kombat just came out. I was in second grade the first time I was ripping people's heads off in video games. Is that okay? I mean, I'm all right. I'm a healthy person. I have friends who, did the same thing. They're not really ripping people's heads off, but maybe, it's not necessarily the right thing to kind of plug into as a society, moving forward. Maybe we should be, plugging into things like, instead of being in the Mortal Kombat, maybe I should have been learning how to, like, I don't know, survive in the Boy Scouts or something. Maybe instead of like doing, the crotch chop from D-Generation X in pro wrestling, maybe I should have been like learning about like hanging out with hanging out with young women, hanging out with girls my age, not to date them, but just to be with them and hang out with them. But instead, here I am doing the crotch chop and telling people to suck it and looking at women who have fake boobs on channel 37 or something. Maybe we're plugging into the wrong.
Wait, what channel?
Well, okay. Well, the Spice Channel was channel 39, and you needed a cable box. You turn to channel 2, and then you turn that to 39. It's a whole thing. It was the suburbs in the 90s.
You don't need to be finding channels on TV.
Yeah, you don't really need it anymore. But if you want to go into a hot tub time machine with me someday, we'll have a grand old time watching some messy Spice Channel. Shout out to all the 90s kids.
Or like
so much static. I don't understand. What the hell am I looking at?
Well, here's a glimpse. Like, this is such a thing. Watching, like, in the late 90s into the early 2000s, Comedy Central late at night, South Park, The Man Show, and all those commercials that they played during those things. And just like, what a time. Because like I remember watching South Park for the first time. I was 8. My stepbrother showed me it. Should not have been watching that. I was watching James Bond movies when I was 8 years old. I watched The Godfather when I was 10. And it's just like, I watched my first R-rated movie when I was less than 10. And like, I would like to think that I'm a normally functioning adult. And I am, but you do have a desensitization to so many things. And also
but you want realistic stuff too, though, on screen, right?
Yeah.
Like you want the experiences of other people. I mean, to be there, because I don't want to see a child soldier. But if I had never heard the concept of children being like given guns, then, oh man, Beast of No Nation on Netflix, like that is going to open your eyes. And then if you go and research that and find out that not only is that real, and not only does that like has happened and is still happening, and that I think it's like a big country that they made for that movie. Like many other countries used like that specific thing to do, and that's only one very specific like no like human rights like violation. Like I like the idea that you just have to be ready for what you're like the ride that you're about to be on. Like for example, like for me, I saw this movie called Boys in the Hood. I saw that when I was maybe like ninth or 10th grade. Obviously not meant for 9th or 10th graders to watch, but there was some stuff in there that either like I have seen or dealt with, or like I know people who have known people that have like dealt with some of those things, and that was realistic as hell. And I think it's important, and to say that like you should only watch like you should only be shown this stuff. And remember, I still like the idea of like responsible, like whatever the hell, but like to say that you should only show like this stuff, then that kind of says that like now other stuff isn't actually happening, but it is happening, and it's either to depict it would be eye opening, to show it would be kind of like oh okay crap, like this is like my experience like on my television screen. So then it's like maybe not that I don't use the word validating, but like it's like okay, so like somebody sees me and people like the struggle that I go through. So I like the realistic stuff, and even if it's like dramatized, like I still that's not how you say that word, whatever. But like
Traumatized.
yeah, it's important. I like to make up words sometimes. I don't know, but yeah, like it's important. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of want to like stir something up in your comment section. When you post this, I'm going to say something controversial in your comment section. Okay?
Look, I watched The Godfather when I was 10 years old because my grandfather told me it was my culture and my mom showed me it. And it's very interesting being an Italian American, watching The Godfather, Goodfellas, The Sopranos, and how much Italian Americans love those movies and shows because it's representation. But the thing is, they're supposed to be cautionary tales.
Right.
Like at the end, Michael Corleone is not a good person. And when that door shuts, his descent into hell is complete. And you're just like, not a great thing. But the thing is, it's like people love, like Italian people love The Godfather. And like you watch The Godfather Part 2, it's a dark movie. And there's some, like Michael Corleone at the end of those films is not a good person, nor is he a happy person, or is he a satisfied person. And you watch Goodfellas, the whole entire point at the end of Goodfellas is like Henry Hill's whole life gets turned upside down. But at the end, he still wanted to be a gangster.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think there's an accuracy to it. I think that whether it's excess or it's power, it's something that, human beings, they crave, they crave that, they want that, and they like that, going back to Clockwork Orange, while that may seem kind of more tame than other things you've seen, it's incredibly effective. The naked woman standing over him and him wanting to touch her and being repulsed by it at the same time. There's something incredibly powerful about that scene.
Well,
and
like that whole entire thing about behavior modification is messed up.
Yeah, it is. Totally.
Which it's interesting because my girlfriend Jess is a BCBA and does behavior analysis, and like that's a really messed up way of looking at it. And it was a really unethical way of forcing that upon him. And they take a look at that in the film. But I'll let you continue, Alex. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, that's there's repressing the human spirit in that way. This is even of someone who's as terrible as our narrator is. But Boys in the Hood is once again, it's depicting something very real, and I remember I saw that when I was even younger than you, I think, Matt. And I remember thinking, wow, holy shit, and the way that they depicted it, the way that they showed Boys in the Hood was just, it hits you in the chest, and that's what that filmmaker wanted to do. And I think that's something that I think filmmakers go up to the plate saying, well, here we go. They might set my house on fire for this one. Kevin Smith with Red State. I mean, Kevin Smith really went there. That's his best film. And he went there, and he had, lots of protests from the far right Christians when he did that film, and he goes there.
About Dogma.
Oh, Dogma. Yeah, Dogma's not even that big of a deal, but they gave him shit for that too. And I could,
it has a giant shit monster in it.
Yeah, that's not even the part that they had a problem with.
Well, and it's so interesting because, as somebody who loves South Park, I've watched it since I was a kid, and what Matt Stone and Trey Parker do is they don't give a shit.
Yeah, I mean, they voice, people who have mental illness and mentally challenged, and they do voices for those.
Well, and the thing is, it's they shed a light on so many different things. And I remember when Isaac Hayes quit because they made fun of Scientology. And I'm like, okay, well, as a young Roman Catholic kid, Jesus had a boxing match with Satan. Satan threw the match. Everybody in town betted on Satan. So Satan threw the match, he had bet on Jesus so he could go back to hell with everybody's money. There's an episode where they have little boys on leashes with the priests. And one good priest tries to find the actual book of God at the Vatican, and the Vatican catacombs are Pitfall, that video game where it's you're running side to side, and you find out that the Roman Catholic Church is run by a giant interdimensional tarantula.
Okay.
And then there's an episode where you see God, where he's a mix of human, goat, all these different kinds of things. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, and you're offended because Tom Cruise wouldn't come out of a closet. And I appreciate the fact that Trey Parker and Matt Stone put that spotlight on everyone.
Yeah.
And the South Park movie, what the hell? Satan's having an affair with Saddam Hussein. They're going to execute 2 comedians because they make a dirty movie. You have a West Side Story musical numbers. What's going on here? And it's it's so interesting because I'm gonna this will be my last point about this topic is so many films take a look at complex and complicated things and touchy things, and there's different ways to look at it, because if you look at something just on the surface and don't think about what the director's trying to say, it'll be pretty messed up. But a film like RoboCop is supposed to be commentating on violence. And also there's a difference between action and violence. Saving Private Ryan is not an action movie. It's a war film with violence in it.
Right.
John Wick is an action movie. The point of that is to watch people die. And when it really comes down to it, and you could watch something like Sicario. That's not an action movie. There's violence though. and it's shocking violence. So, like, I watched Burn After Reading again today. If you haven't seen Burn After Reading, there's a really shocking burst of violence in the middle of the film. That's not an action. It's really uncomfortable and awkward violence that happens in life. And that's one of the interesting things about Coen Brothers films, is that it doesn't glorify violence. It shows the unbelievably harmful and just awkwardness of violence in humanity. Like No Country for Old Men's not an action movie, but it has some crazy violence in it. But that stuff happens, and that's why it makes it so much more poignant when you're watching it. But I'm done with that point. So I don't know, Alex, if you want to bring up your rant to me.
Oh, I'm bringing my rant to you? Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
They can't get pissed off. They can't get pissed off.
Yeah. Oh, let me see. Well, no, I the only one I have is the one that I've kind of had in my brain for many years. I think I've talked to you guys about, and it's this idea. Of course, I have to bring up Tarantino again, but it's not about him necessarily, maybe indirectly. And it's this idea that movies, cinema, films are imitating television, or they're imitating episodic forms of entertainment in ways that, films never did before. And so you may agree or disagree with that, and you can kind of go with that. Tarantino's thing was that because people are getting away from using film and they're using digital, that it's like, if you're going to see a movie, it's like TV in public. That you're not watching a film anymore, you're watching TV in public. And that's one of his reasons, by the way, he wants to get away. He wants to retire. He says he's going to retire. Now, I don't agree with him on that. That can be a separate rant. But I did find, ironically, around the time that he said that, I think was around when Django Unchained got released, that the films that I would go to watch were starting to feel more like, well, I could have seen this on Netflix, or I could have seen this as a TV movie, or this feels more like a show like The Sopranos or Peaky Blinders, where something cinematic didn't happen in it. So my rant passing to you is film feeling more like TV, or filmmakers imitating TV and episodic entertainment and showing it in theaters.
Which is fun. So just on a quick side note, it's really funny that he says that, because it's not like Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction look like I'm going and watching something that's like, I want to see on a biggest screen possible kind of thing. But to be fair, he had a smaller budget for those films, which I don't think that's really fair, because there's a lot of independent films that don't have the budget to make this look like a big grand thing. And it's so interesting because you could date this back historically all the way back to the start of television. Because the reason why big sprawling musicals and big historical epics became so popular is because they needed to compete against television.
Okay.
Because the thing is, what's going to get somebody to be like, I couldn't have gotten this at home? Ben-Hur, The Ten Commandments, Lawrence of Arabia. These are things you couldn't have gotten on a television. These are the things you need to see on the biggest screen possible. And that's why those, like, and then Cleopatra kind of just like torpedoed that whole thing, because it was such a humongous disaster. Because it was like the most expensive film ever made up to that point, and it was a financial bust. And like musicals fell out of favor, westerns fell out of favor. There's a difference between watching like Hopalong Cassidy on your TV and watching John Ford's The Searchers. Because like The Searchers, you're like sprawling western epic, and Hopalong Cassidy looks like somebody cut a cactus out of cardboard and stuck it behind them. But it's so interesting, especially today, because Marvel Cinematic Universe is the biggest thing in film. It's the most profitable, it's the biggest money-making thing, and it's 100% episodic. It's like watching one giant TV show. And each of these phases is like a season. And the Avengers movie at the end is the season finale. And now they're literally making television shows. Television shows that look like movies, but they're television shows on Disney Plus because they have like 150, $180 million budgets. Like you're watching this, I'm like, holy crap, how am I watching this at home? Like the opening action sequence in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier is this amazing aerial dogfight basically between Falcon and a bunch of helicopters over the desert. Yeah. And like, I can't believe I'm watching this in a TV show. Game of Thrones, this new Lord of the Rings show is going to be the most expensive thing ever made for television. That's going to be on Amazon. And I think the line is blurring between film, like what's a film and what's a TV show, because things like Breaking Bad, Mad Men, there's other ones popping in my head that changed what television can be. And now you see like Russell Crowe is a movie star. Russell Crowe starred in a Showtime show about Roger Ailes.
Yeah.
Brian, like you're seeing big movie stars like Jude Law has been in multiple HBO shows at this point. It's like that line's blurring. And I can definitely see where Tarantino's coming from. And some TV, like some movie, like movie franchises generally feel episodic and they're becoming the biggest thing. So you have that blurred line between like Tarantino makes a film. And if it's a standalone thing, you're there and it feels his, basically, I would argue anything past Jackie Brown feels like I'm watching a film on the big screen. Because like the rest of them are pretty small budgeted, small scale human dramas. You get to Kill Bill, there's something completely different going on here. And that's so interesting coming from him because he was one of the Kevin Smith, Paul Thomas Anderson, and probably a few others, Darren Aronofsky, that those 90s leaders of the independent film movement blurred the line of like, this is a film, but it feels like I could have watched this on TV. Like there's small films that don't have big budgets. Now, as their careers have gone on, they've become exponentially more cinematic. Because like you can't, like Darren Aronofsky, like you watch The Black Swan. I'm like, this is not a TV show. This is something purely cinematic. Noah's not the greatest film of his. Like you can't imagine like somebody made this for TV. Paul Thomas Anderson, watching There Will Be Blood, like that is sprawling and big, and like Scorsese, which was, I was so glad I saw The Irishman in a theater. Like, it definitely doesn't feel like his most cinematic looking film. Silence did. Okay. That was a beautiful film. But like, I think it's interesting with that idea, and you can look at it different ways. If like purely looking at like this looks like a film or this looks like a TV show, that line's blurring. Because like, here's a perfect example. The first Avengers movie, I love. Cinematography looks like crap. Looks like I'm watching a really high budgeted TV show. Because that's how Joss Whedon shoots his movies. And me personally, I hate it. Like, as somebody who's like super into cinematography, like who loves Roger Deakins, like if you watch something Roger Deakins shoots, it looks cinematic. Emmanuel Lubezki looks cinematic. I watch Thor Ragnarok. That looks cinematic because it feels like I'm watching something beautiful and really well shot and not like a soundstage. Because like a lot of the first Avengers movie looks like it was shot on a soundstage. And it has that look to it. But if you're thinking about what feels like a film, what feels like a TV show, that's definitely blurring, because there's so many television shows that I watch, a lot of HBO things. Like, look at The Witcher on Netflix. That doesn't look like a TV show. Like, some of the effects don't look the greatest. But like, it doesn't look like it's meant to be a TV show. You watch so many things on HBO, like HBO shows nowadays. Like The Sopranos looks like a TV show. But like, even something like, there's what was it called? It had Jude Law in it. It was very Wicker Man feeling, kind of like small, like island community, kind of like cultish kind of thing. And it was beautiful to look at. It didn't look like I'm sitting there and like, this doesn't look like a TV show anymore. But if you're looking purely from like a storytelling perspective in terms of episodic, I think these big franchises are blurring the line between, because like 100% Marvel movies from Marvel Studios right now are episodic and feel like a giant TV show.
Yeah.
Any franchise like James Bond, like, feels episodic. And that they've been doing that since the 60s. So it's not like it's exactly new. Godzilla movies have been going on for decades and decades and decades. They feel episodic. Monster of the Week. That's how Godzilla movies used to feel. Who's the next big monster? Godzilla versus this. Godzilla versus this. But like, I wouldn't say it's necessarily new, but it's becoming television, and blur the line what you define as television. Because I feel like streaming services have been the thing that's blurred the line here.
Yes.
Because
so.
It's like, you have a streaming service. Is this a TV movie? How do you define television? For me personally, I define any streaming service as television.
Yes, me too.
But the thing is, it's like, some of the things, like some of the biggest, like almost all of the big Oscar nominees this year were streaming films.
Right.
Nomadland won Best Picture. It was a Hulu film.
Yeah.
It wasn't produced by Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
They bought it and put it on there. And that's really what Hulu does. They buy up all the big indie films and put them on Hulu. Netflix does all of their, like, Netflix does their big things where, like, they have movies with Ryan Reynolds action movies, Mark Wahlberg action movies, Chris Hemsworth action movies, but then they bankroll Marriage Story and The Irishman and Two Popes and stuff like that, where they're like, we're gunning for Oscars. Mank, we want that Oscar. But like, I blame the streaming services for really blurring that line, and also the prestige television. And honestly, that really kind of started with, I guess, AMC, with Breaking Bad, Mad Men, Walking Dead. They were like, we're not going for like, this is just your like, maybe not Walking Dead. That's probably not the best example, but like, Breaking Bad changed television. Like, this was a whole other level of television. It wasn't a procedural thing. It had a story, and it knew when it was going to end. And it did it in an amazing, well-told way that, like, why do you have to go to the movies so much if you have stuff like that at home that you can watch?
Right.
If I could watch Breaking Bad's probably better. Like, especially last season Breaking Bad, like the Ozymandias episode, like stuff like that. Some of those episodes are better than most movies you're going to see.
Wow. Yeah.
So why leave the home and go to the movies? Mm-hmm. And that's a shame, because I feel like a lot of the indie films are going to wind up being bought out by streaming services, because movie theaters don't want to show them in theaters because people won't go see them in theaters.
Right.
There's not enough me. I'll see any movie in a theater, mm-hmm. because that's where I feel like they're supposed to be seen. But the thing is, there's not enough people like me. Like, I love Annihilation, one of my favorite films the last couple of years. Nobody saw it, in America at least. And globally, it was a Netflix film.
Right. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, Oh, okay.
Everywhere outside the US, for the most part, it was a Netflix distributed film. It was on Netflix. I
Right.
saw it in the theater, and that blew me away. But the thing is, I'm glad I saw it in the theater instead
Yeah.
of the first time. The whole last 14 months or so have been so sad because,
Mm.
like, I wanted to see Tenet on a 70 millimeter print in
Mm.
the biggest screen I could see it. And I saw it at a Navy Yard drive-in. The only
Yeah.
positive is I could control the volume because apparently Christopher Nolan doesn't know how to, or consciously decides not to because he does it on purpose and he said it because it's a new bold way of sound mixing. I'm like, okay.
I
But
would need Nolan to sit with me and narrate the film, not just because of the sound, because what's going on, guy?
he doesn't want to narrate it. He just told you, don't think about it, just feel it.
No, I need him with his British voice to feed me popcorn and tell me what's going on in the movie.
But so those are my thoughts. I agree with Tarantino on this. I think the line is completely blurring between television and movies. And I think the dawn of prestige television, where you have big name people doing television, like huge actors, movie stars that you never thought would be on a television show are doing television shows.
Yeah.
So why not?
Mm.
Like Netflix has Adam McKay's next film, if I'm not mistaken. Leo's the lead in it. Leo's leading a Netflix film.
The Don't Look Up with him and Jennifer Lawrence.
Yep. That's
Yeah,
a Netflix film.
that's right. Yeah.
Things have changed.
Star-studded cast.
And I really hope that it's going to happen, honestly, but I really hope that movie theaters don't just turn into blockbuster movie show houses. Hopefully there's at least some indie theaters still that show the smaller films, but the thing, it's a business.
Right.
Those
I
smaller
know.
things don't make money because not enough people go see them.
It's true.
And I don't necessarily blame the bigger movies. I
Right.
blame people that just like they don't care that much
You gotta
about
care.
movies. We care about movies,
Mhm.
but most people don't care that much about movies.
I remember I saw Lady Bird at a small theater in Asbury Park, and that was awesome. It felt like you were, well, sitting in somebody's living room. They have like couch chairs in there. It's so cool, and they got a little concession stand there too, and everything. And I love that. That's a great movie.
Yeah, I loved AMC Hamilton so much because it was a 24 and they had indie films. I saw Lady Bird at AMC Hamilton. AMC Hamilton's dead.
Yeah, I know. It's sad, and it's going to happen. But I think I hope there is sort of an ebb and flow for cinema. But I guess I don't know if you're an actor right now. I guess the good thing is there's got to be a lot of options. If you're an actor or you're someone who works in the industry, there's a lot of different projects because of all the different streaming services competing. There must be a lot of different projects for them to compete for.
Must be content.
Yeah.
Must be content.
So whether or not it's the most artistically pleasing thing to be involved with, I wonder. I don't know, but yeah.
But do either of you have anything else to add on my thoughts? I don't know if that was really a rant because I wound up agreeing with it, but it is what it is.
Yeah, maybe it's an okay thing. Like, also, there have been countless times, so countless, I can't think of any examples, but there have been countless times where I've been watching a movie and it's like, or I walked out of one and I said, yeah, well, that didn't really get to explore much. That should have been on TV. So that's one point. And second point is maybe the competition is good. Maybe, like, I think I remember reading some article right around the time when the last season of Breaking Bad came out, and they said something on the lines of filmmakers are kind of slacking, almost expecting you to come in the theater. So television basically said, oh, so we see a need. We're going to take that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they did. And damn, did they do it. Breaking Bad, like, people talk about it, but Breaking Bad, that's not like a recent show. That show came out, I think, when we were in like high school or something. What year did that come out?
2007 and 8 was around when it ended. Or
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Wow, that's a
And-
long time ago. Yeah.
fact checker Shane. I'm looking up.
Yeah, like that. Fantastic show.
Oh,
Fantastic
sorry.
show.
It started in 2008, ended in 2013.
But yeah, so we were in high
It
school.
ended
Yeah.
8 years ago. They've had
Yeah.
a whole entire spin-off series that's lasted 6 seasons already after it, which Better Call Saul is amazing.
Yeah.
I love that show. So Breaking Bad has a 9.5 out of 10 on IMDb
Good.
with 1.5 million reviews.
Mm.
So like I'm glad you brought that point up, Matt, because yeah, TV were like, and movies were like, they'll just keep coming, and TV's like, ha ha, want to bet? And they called them on their bluff, and cinema's hurting for it. I remember when I first started this channel, I wasn't going to review TV. I honestly didn't watch that much TV anymore. It was this channel and trying to review more television that actually encouraged me to start watching TV again. Like there was a select few shows that I watched, but like now I try to catch as much as possible. Like I'm balancing a bunch of shows all at once. Like just case in point, yesterday, I watched a new episode of Cake, which is a very strange, like surrealist skit show on FX that comes out on Hulu. I watched the new Mighty Ducks Game Changers episode. I watched the season finale of Invincible, that adult animated comic book show on Amazon. I watched Disney Plus's new episode of Big Shot with John Stamos coaching a young girls basketball team. And Apple TV Plus. Oh, I enjoy it. It's like, I like John Stamos. He's charismatic. It's pretty predictable, but it's a fun show. And then Apple TV Plus came out with a new show, Mosquito whatever, with Justin Theroux in it. I watched the first 30 minutes of the first episode. I haven't finished it yet. But like there's just so much going on. And like new shows and everything. So like it's changed for me. I balance both. It's a lot, but
I don't know how you do it.
well, now I'm trying to get into podcasts too, because also since I'm on some, I figured might as well listen to some. And like those are things I put on while I'm doing work.
Yeah.
So, like I don't have to watch anything. But yeah. So my rant topic, I guess, for Matt. How do you feel about the fact that streaming is basically turning back into cable television?
Mm.
With the fact that there is so many damn streaming services that if you put them all together, it costs as much as cable. And the fact that honestly, a lot of them are moving back to releasing shows once a week. Because Netflix is basically the only one that exclusively releases fully released shows with all the episodes for the most part. What are your thoughts about the interesting shift in streaming towards what we all grew up with cable?
First, a side note about just like this is like not really relevant, but I think. Well, actually, no, it actually is pretty relevant. I think that we're going, if not already, we're going to see a very large shift towards piracy. because if I have so many options and I want to be in, like, the fear of missing out is so great, and I want to be in, like, the cultural conversation. I want to know, like, what's going on, like, so, but I don't know anybody that has HBO or this thing or that thing. Okay, let's see who uploaded it online. And that was like a really big thing, maybe like 10 years ago, and then it kind of sort of like died down. But oh boy, if that keeps happening, I remember the reaction online when the streaming service Peacock came out, and like a lot of people were like, "All right, come on, now you're kind of like you're screwing me around now." Like,
well, also terrible title.
Also terrible title. Also, why would you take The Office off of Netflix? Damn, like who's? Does anybody follow? Do you have Peacock?
I do have Peacock. So, well, so to tell you a little bit about Peacock, so I've watched Yellowstone on there, which honestly is probably going to shift to Paramount Plus because it's a Paramount show eventually. But I've watched the reboots of Punky Brewster and Saved by the Bell on there, which I enjoyed them, but as it like they had Brave New World, which was mediocre to me, which was their first big release. And honestly, they just buy the rights to a bunch of British shows and throw them on as Peacock originals. HBO Max does the same thing. Netflix does that all the time. There's so many foreign language shows and movies on there. They're like, Netflix original. Just like, is it though? But the thing is, Peacock has the WWE network now. So if you want to watch any pay-per-views, you just have Peacock now instead of WWE network. Oh yeah, dig it. Yeah, so if you want to watch pro wrestling, WWE, you gotta have Peacock basically. So that you could I watch WrestleMania on my phone.
That's the only reason we got it was for WrestleMania.
Yeah, I had it up on my phone, checked in on a couple matches. I watched Cesaro do the UFO. That was pretty cool. But like, so Peacock is definitely towards the bottom because here's the thing: I don't rewatch things. If I were somebody who religiously rewatched The Office, oh, I'd be killing it with Peacock. But I don't. I love Parks and Rec. I have too much content to rewatch TV shows. I rewatch movies because like it's a couple hour commitment. Rewatching a TV show, like I watched Friends for the first time. You know how long that took to get through 10 seasons of 25 episodes of Friends?
Could it be any longer?
Hey.
Oh.
How you doing?
I don't know. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Peacock is
what?
Peacock's not something I would be like, go rush out and get Peacock. There's other streaming services that have better. Paramount Plus and Peacock are kind of like right now.
But there's like that is in a folder of like some other bottom streaming services as well. I think that there's going to be a swell. Well, there already is a swell. And then eventually these things are going to die off because some of these streaming services upload like content. Nobody really gives a crap.
Quibi.
Boom.
Which got bought by Roku.
Oh, yeah. Take it far.
Because now Roku wants to have their own streaming service. Roku
also,
TV.
Movie Pass was about to come back. You guys should look into that. Movie Pass was like they wanted to kind of like come back, and I think they ran out of money again, or something happened. So the plan is on pause, I think.
I'm gonna reactivate my AMC A list once I go back to the movies. I'm not getting on board Movie Pass.
I don't know. Wait, what was your original question again? But aside from the fact that like there's too many services.
So it's basically here's a case in point. Did you know there's a new feature on Netflix that's a shuffle thing where it's like, I have no idea what to watch. Wouldn't it be great if something was just randomly on Netflix and I could just hop in and watch it? I'm like, you mean like television? So like,
Mm.
So basically, what are your thoughts on the fact that like streaming services were supposed to like revolutionize what television was, and now they're literally just turning into television?
Uh, I feel like they are kind of revolutionizing it. I think that Disney Plus, I thought it was a stupid idea. Nobody was going to buy it. And then like everybody fell in love with it. And now like in recent memory, like WandaVision was like the thing that everyone had to see. I think, and some people talking about it, I think it's as big as like Game of Thrones. I think they are kind of like revolutionizing it in terms of like, hey, like you can have all of this just for like $14. Like that's it. I think that maybe television might have gotten lazy, and then these streaming services kind of came in and then sort of say, hey, so we're going to throw millions of dollars into projects. You're going to notice that, like, and we're going to get not just like B-list or like C-list actors, but like A-list actors. And we're going to put them in like our original content or whatever. And we're going to keep churning it out. We're also going to hike up our prices like every year, but we're not going to tell you about that. Like, we're not going to hype it up so much. But yeah, we're just going to keep like making more and more and more. And I'm kind of sort of down with it to an extent. I have Amazon, I have Netflix, Hulu, and I have access to Disney Plus, but I never go on there. So actually, and then that's really it. I don't want it anymore.
But the thing is, there are more, and they'll keep being more.
As long as those things continue to be innovative, because more and more choices, I don't know if, so like kind of like I said about competition, like the competition of movies and television, hopefully the result is, okay, we're going to step up our game, and then then we are, like the consumer is the winner. But I think if there's too much competition, then everything is sort of diluted and silly, and then yeah.
That's what happened. That's what happened to TV.
Well, yeah. An interesting thing. So Matt, you brought up WandaVision.
Which I did not see, by the way.
WandaVision worked because it used a TV model.
Mm.
The whole entire gist of Netflix was, we release all of them at once. You can binge watch our shows. And then all the streaming services started realizing, well, that doesn't help buzz. So everybody else Disney Plus is, here's the next episode, the next week. That's television model. What I'm saying, like, honestly, it's starting to make me feel like Animal Farm. So like, we hate the farmer. Television over there isn't doing right by us. So we overthrow the farm, and then the pigs, which are the streaming services, are turning just into the TV again. And then we're all convinced that this is something completely different. Because it's like Netflix is literally taking steps back and literally has TV on it now. Go onto the Netflix shuffle and see what's just playing on TV. And then all the streaming services are dropping like new episodes every week. It's not binging anymore. And let's be real, Netflix, 90% of their content is trash or mediocre.
Yeah.
They put out so much content and they're spending so much money. Netflix is going to fail at some point. They revolutionized this, but their model, they can't sustain the cash that they need to keep putting into these budgets.
Right.
And I think they're being beaten at their own game by Hulu. Well, here's the thing. Hulu is owned by Disney now. So, like, you might not have Disney Plus, but you still have Disney. And Disney's like, here's this content on here, and this is the content we're going to have on Disney Plus. We bundle them together, throw in ESPN Plus because sports, and you have that. Amazon is dropping. Well, here's the thing. Amazon has blank checks. Let's be real here. Amazon is like the richest company in the world. So them making the most expensive television show in history with this Lord of the Rings thing is not surprising.
Yeah.
because that Jeff Bezos money. And like,
Sure.
you have Disney Plus, which I think it's blowing expectations out of proportion because nobody thought that many people would just sign up for Disney Plus for nostalgia, just to watch all the Disney shows and Disney movies. And then they have Marvel and Star Wars. Basically, if you look at the release schedule for the whole entire year of 2021, there's a new Marvel or Star Wars show every week.
Wow. Oh man.
I want to see that, like, the longevity though, because Netflix, whatever Netflix like kind of puts to the give the like whatever makes it unique, but they do a really good job at that. I don't know if Disney Plus is going to be around or as prominent as Netflix ever was in, let's say, 5 years. Are you really going to have Disney Plus in 5 years?
They're projecting Disney Plus to overtake Netflix within a couple years.
I'm incredibly curious to know, like, what are they going to put on there, because they have a lot of content, but hands down, everybody that I talk to about Disney Plus always says it's like that free trial, like, when pandemic, whatever, or I only watch it for one thing and then I deactivated my account. My kids don't even watch that. Blah 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 blah.
Well, here's the
thing. Know.
Most people watch Netflix, and Netflix became successful because of The Office and Friends. And they're getting rid of all non-Netflix original content. That's their business model moving forward.
Yeah.
Not enough people give a shit about Netflix content to stay with Netflix, especially when it's going to be $18 a month at some point.
And yeah, unless like the more episodic programming they do moving forward is like 10 out of 10 type stuff, because the
reality television.
Oh, well, then there you go. It's all going
Netflix
downhill.
Actually has been doing.
Yeah.
Well, they're not the only ones that have. Actually, they don't have anywhere near as much reality television as some other streaming services. Yeah. Like HBO Max has a ton of reality TV.
Yeah.
On there.
Did it ever get touched though? I wonder if that stuff. I wonder how much. I wonder like the numbers behind that. Does it ever get touched?
Well, here's the thing. They're not none of these streaming services are very transparent about anything, which is also why I'm like, I don't trust Netflix. Netflix is like bleeding cash. Yeah. Like, they're not making money. They're spending so much on new content. They're not making money. I don't see how they could sustain as a business into the future. And honestly, they might have been the cutting edge here, but I think they're being beaten at their own game.
Sounds like you want them to get beaten.
If they put out better content, I wouldn't want them to, but basically they just half-ass so many things. And now they're also, like everybody else, getting in the business of trying to buy up things that are supposed to be in theaters.
Which I'm not going to say that's a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea. It's a smart idea, which is also because the pandemic has changed drastically the model of all of this.
But I'm curious, when the pandemic is over, I'm curious, all of these things, if we're not so tethered to our TVs as much as we have been, then certain things are going to have to be elevated even that much further, not just like the theater and film, but then also like these streaming services as well. And the pandemic ending might be the knife in a couple of these streaming services backs.
Oh, and honestly, some of them are gonna, like, I don't know how well Peacock and Paramount Plus are gonna really get out of this. And Apple TV Plus has a lot of great content, just not enough people subscribe to it. And honestly, it's one of the cheapest ones. But I guess one big point that I have here is, you remember when Stranger Things season 3 came out?
Is that the most recent season?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Within a couple weeks, nobody was talking about it anymore.
Yeah.
Because you binge it, you all freak out about it, and then it's gone. And it's on to the next thing. People were fervently glued to WandaVision for over 2 months.
And then ultimately, a lot of people got disappointed.
Yeah, because that's their fault for coming up with a bunch of fan theories that nobody promised them. Everyone's like, this is Mephisto, this is Mephisto, this is Mephisto. Nobody promised you Mephisto in the show. And then you get like, where was Mephisto? It's like, that's your fault for coming up with, like, makes no sense. But the thing is, Disney Plus is, and true, we'll see if people get oversaturated by Star Wars shows and Marvel shows. But for now, there's more buzz around what Disney Plus is doing than anything that Netflix is doing. Netflix is like, look at Bridgerton. Nothing on Disney Plus is like Bridgerton. And then nobody was talking about Bridgerton 2 weeks after it came out.
I don't have a lot of hope for Star Wars, to be honest with you. Like, even though there's like a lot of like interesting ideas, like the Obi-Wan show, like a lot of other stuff, I don't know if like a lot of that stuff is going to be good.
I don't know. The Mandalorian capture, like, I think people were like, The Mandalorian was the biggest show on television last year.
But they can't just be like 1 in 3 shows that they constantly make are good.
Well, here's the thing. We don't know yet.
Terrible.
We haven't seen any of the other Star Wars shows yet. What we do have is plenty of evidence that the vast majority of what Netflix comes out with is mediocre or bad.
And then also we have evidence that people are falling out of love with Star Wars. The people that go like I feel like the loudest people are only the fringe lovers of Star Wars. The people that are talking about, if you didn't see, like, I don't know, Phantom Menace in theaters, you're not a real fan, like stuff like that.
To be fair, Star Wars fandom is like the most toxic thing in movies right now.
I think I'm ridiculous.
But I've seen a lot of people say that Mandalorian sparked their love for Star Wars again.
Then I hope that,
and they trust Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau.
Then I hope the show doesn't get like bogged down by like the actors and their own interesting politics and controversy. I hope that the show doesn't.
They just disappear.
I think that lady's coming back. I'm almost positive that she's. I don't know, but or I hope that the show doesn't. Like
Gina Carano.
Oh, from the first one, the stormtrooper, the female stormtrooper.
No, Gina Carano was from Alderaan. She was like, she's a former MMA fighter, and she was one of the main supporting characters in the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian. But she made she made a bunch of transphobic comments on Twitter, and then compared the plight of conservatives in America to Jews in the Holocaust.
And I think she also like either denied COVID or said something bad about masks. She said something weird about masks.
The straw that broke the camel's back was when she tried to be like conservatives are being hunted like the Jews during the Holocaust. Because that's a thing. So, like,
Alex, you look so disappointed.
This could be a whole other rant, because this is my thoughts on this.
Oh crap.
Say whatever the hell you want, but your employer has every right to fire you if their business is gonna be hurt by your opinions.
You're censoring me. Okay, now comment.
You're an at-will employee. Like, if I started saying stuff like that out in public and rioters like, we don't want to be dealing with you anymore, goodbye, I'd be fired tomorrow.
Yeah, I know.
Please don't deny masks, Shane. Don't let that be the hill you die on.
Both of you know how serious I've taken all of this. You were literally the first people to come into my house last weekend during all of this. So
I don't know why that makes me dance, but it makes me dance.
It was a wonderful thing. And I was so happy with the Welcome to the Wasteland episode we came up with for No Country for Old Men. That was
a lot of fun. That was great. By the way, I watched the Seventh Seal because I had learned that was an influence on No Country for Old Men.
We're up there.
Yeah, that was, I really enjoyed that film, and I got to indulge more in death as a character, which is
Sidao.
movie star. As soon as he comes out, he was a movie star. Just the way he looked on screen, he was born to be in film.
Yeah,
the way he looked in that movie. Yeah, and his dialogue in the first 15-20 minutes. Oh God. It's like I'm gonna scream that on a rooftop someday.
might be a nomination for the movie club. Honestly,
yeah,
it could be. Honestly,
Yeah.
I've been getting so hyped wanting to watch The Godfather again. I might put that on there.
Oh, right on. I still need to watch Amores Perros. That'll be good. But yeah,
I've been waiting until May actually started. So I might watch it. I have a day off on Tuesday, so I might try watching it then. 2.5 hours.
Yeah, we still got some time. We still got a couple weeks.
Yeah, we got 4 weeks at this point, so I think we're good.
What's the streaming service that comes on again? What streaming service it comes on again? More.
Is
it HBO Max?
Is it HBO Max? I
think so. All of you out there listening to us go on a tangent here, that's the next movie for the movie club. So Development Hell Podcast is going to have that at the end of the month. So shamelessly plugging future episodes. But I guess at this point, we talked a lot. Does anybody else have any final thoughts or anything they want to bring up before we wrap up the podcast for today?
Let me shout out 2 of the other little rants that I had ideas for, the original rant topics.
Okay.
So this one is a small one. This one goes, a real cinephile would never watch a movie on their phone, or maybe like a movie for the first time. I think Steven Soderbergh or somebody said that they saw somebody watching a movie on their phone and they hated it. And then also he noticed that the person was like fast forwarding only to the action scenes, and again, hated that. So yeah, how do you feel about that? And then also, maybe sometimes a critic's point of view is crap and you shouldn't give attention. Can you name a time where that was true? That maybe like Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb, whatever, maybe like they steered you wrong because things were like either super high or super low, and then you got a completely different takeaway, either loving or hating something that was trash or, you know, a masterpiece for you.
So
please write that last one down, Matt, because that one, yeah.
I have a review in my head that I'm legitimately thinking about that I thought was trash, and it was from one of the greatest film reviewers in the history of cinema. Oh, well, and the thing is, I have plenty of people who disagree with my thoughts on films, but that's the thing. It's all subjective.
Yeah.
Like, people argue with me all the time on my YouTube channel, and that's perfectly fine. We all have different perspectives. I just ask that we'll be respectful and have a conversation about it.
Not everybody wants to be respectful or have a conversation about it. Some people will say that, like, not only are you wrong, but because you differ from me, your opinion or intellect or taste is below me. How do you feel about that? This is me getting him mad, Alex, by the way.
Why did you bring that one up with me, Matt? I certainly have a lot of feelings about that. I'm surprised neither of you brought up machines. One of you would try to get me off on a tangent about the robo-apocalypse, but we didn't get there yet. So maybe next time. But I have a feeling we're going to do another rant. Actually, I want to figure out what we're going to call this episode, but like, we'll have another episode like this where we talk about topics and share our feelings, and maybe we'll rant about it. Maybe we'll agree with it. You all will just have to tune in and find out. But I definitely have some ideas. Like, now I'm thinking, has Marvel ruined cinema? Because I know some people who think it has. I think that would be an interesting question. I don't think it has, but it has changed it. But all of you are going to have to tune in the next time that we have our rant episode to find out all of our full feelings about those topics. And I really like the ones that Matt came up with. So now you all have incentive to come in and watch our next episodes of the Development Hell podcast. But here's the thing. We appreciate I appreciate getting to listen to Alex and Matt's thoughts. I hope they appreciate listening to mine. But what I appreciate most is all of you tuning in and always listening to our thoughts about movies and always here to support the Development Hell podcast.